Well, my videos lately are just all about controversial things. I don't know why, but some of these things get people really heated and they leave a lot of comments, but that's okay. Everybody has their opinion, right? And everybody's entitled to it. These are just my opinions and this is what works for me and my horse. So I thought it might be helpful for you too. And I know, talking about blanketing horses during the winter can cause a lot of heated discussions amongst equestrians. There are those that are passionate about keeping their horses blanketed all winter long. And at the same time, there's also those that are passionate about letting their horses be horses, and they don't put blankets on their horses no matter how bad the weather gets over the winter. Then there are those like me who kind of lie somewhere in between both the pro and the con to blanketing. And as long as the horse is at the center of the discussion and his interests are the ones that are considered most important, all of them are right. But that being said, there are some benefits to blanketing your horse, and I'm going to give you 5 benefits to blanketing your horse this winter. Now, I should start this off with a disclaimer. If you have never blanketed your horse before, please do some research. Come up with a plan that you can stick to that works best for your situation and your horse. Benefit number 1, a blanket will keep your horse warm. I know, that's fairly obvious, right? A blanket will help to keep your horse warm, but you need to put the right blanket on him at the right time or else he could overheat. So it's kind of a balancing act to know how heavy of a blanket that your horse is going to need. And there are actually apps that can help you through this. Dover Saddlery and Smart Pack have blanketing apps that you can put on your phone, and they can kind of help guide you of if your horse should have a blanket or how heavy of a blanket he needs. Now let's take Frisbee as an example. Frisbee is getting older, and I noticed last winter that he was having a more challenging time keeping his weight on. So I started blanketing him when the temperature would go below freezing, which is 32 degrees Fahrenheit where I live. And I did notice an improvement in his weight during last winter. But here in Colorado, we have some pretty severe temperature fluctuations. I remember a couple of weeks back, it was 80 degrees, and the next day, the high temperature was 20 degrees. So that's like a 60-degree temperature change in one day. This means I need different blankets ranging from 80 grams of fill all the way up to 300 grams of fill. And the higher the fill number, the warmer the blanket is going to be. And then knowing which blanket is appropriate so that Frisbee doesn't get overheated. Benefit number 2, a blanket helps to keep your horse dry. Now, for me, this is even more important than the warmth factor. If your horse is wet, he's more likely to get cold. So if you can keep him dry, he will stay warmer. This is where the waterproofing factor comes in for horse blankets. If your blanket is waterproof, your horse will be able to stay dry. If there is no waterproofing, the blanket will get heavier as it gets saturated with water. So be sure to choose a quality waterproof blanket for your horse. And this is where you figure out the difference between a stable blanket, which doesn't usually have waterproofing, and a turnout blanket, which is usually waterproof. And it's also important to keep in mind that when you wash your horse blanket, sometimes that can interfere with the waterproofing that's on the blanket. They do make products that you can re-waterproof your horse blanket, and if you notice that the water is penetrating the blanket, you might want to consider either getting a new blanket or re-waterproofing the blanket you already have. Benefit number 3, blanketing your horse will help keep him clean. Okay, so this is a huge benefit for me. I love that Frisbee stays clean during the winter. I don't give him a bath during the winter because, let's face it, it gets cold. And since I don't bathe him, he can get really dirty from rolling and lying down. And not only dirty, but he gets really dusty too. But by keeping a blanket on him, it makes it a lot easier and faster for me when I'm getting ready to ride him when I come home from work, and I can quickly groom him and then ride him. But again, I always try and make sure to keep the correct blanket on him. And if it's over 45 degrees, then Frisbee doesn't get to wear a blanket. Like I've said, I don't want him to get overheated. Now, benefit number 4 isn't really a benefit, but it's kind of imperative really. If your horse is clipped, he really needs to have a blanket on. Now, if you work your horse to the point where he breaks a sweat frequently, you may need to clip him when he grows his long, fuzzy winter coat. Now, if he's clipped and you live in a colder climate, he really should probably be wearing a blanket. I debate this with myself and Frisbee. I'm riding him a lot more and he's getting sweaty after I'm riding him. On the one hand, his hair is longer, so after I ride, it takes a long time for him to cool out and for that hair to dry. And on the other hand, he does have a difficult time keeping the weight on over the winter, so I don't want to make it harder on him by taking away his long fuzzy hair that helps keep him warm. And then I think, well, maybe I can just clip him in the areas where he tends to sweat, like at his shoulder and his girth area. I don't know, I'm still debating this in my head. I did clip him one winter when I was taking riding lessons and it was bad. He looked pretty pathetic. I felt really bad for him for what I did to him. And if I do decide to clip him, number one, I need to make sure that I know what I'm doing. Number two, I need to be able to commit to changing his blankets out, because once he's clipped, that's it. He needs to have a blanket on all the time. Now, I don't know if I'm going to clip him or not, but we'll see. Time will tell how that goes. But I do promise that if I do decide to clip him, I will make a video of it after I learn the appropriate ways to do it, and then I'll share it with you here. Benefit number 5, blanketing your horse can decrease feed consumption. Now, I know this might sound like an odd benefit, but hear me out. So Frisbee is considered a senior horse because he is 23 years old. And like I've already shared, during the winter, it's harder for him to keep his weight on. I remedy this by making sure he always has access to high quality hay. He does get a pelleted senior feed that I use in place of grain. He doesn't get a lot, maybe about 1 to 1.5 quarts in the morning and the evening. I don't give him a large amount of concentrated feed because this has its own set of problems. But by having your horse blanketed at the appropriate times, you can help to keep him warm and he won't need as many calories. So you can decrease the amount of concentrated feed that you're feeding. And if he's warm, he may consume less hay too. However, it's really important to make sure that he has access to forage when he wants it. This is also one of the biggest reasons why I really like the slow feed hay nets. It takes longer for him to eat the same amount of hay if I were to throw it on the ground. There's less waste, and it's fairly easy for me to make sure he has feed in front of him at all times, just in case he needs it. Now, ultimately, it is up to you whether you decide to blanket your horse or not. Whatever you decide to do, make sure you're doing what's right for your horse. Don't feel pressured to blanket or not to blanket. Arm yourself with research and come up with a plan that works for you. There really are benefits to blanketing your horse. You just have to decide if it's the right thing to do for your horse. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to watch this video. Be sure to subscribe to my channel so you can watch all my other horse-related videos, DIY projects, and product reviews showing you how to make the most of the time that you have with your horse. Again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.